Hi, today we're going to cover step number 2 of 6 steps to go from an angry to a happy and confident mom. And if you haven't done it already, you can download the 6 steps right here. It should be right here in the blog post. And if this is your first experience with the series, then I would encourage you to go back to blog post number 1, which is step number 1. In that blog post, I share a video where I talk all about my story, how motherhood really was not what I expected it to be, and how I personally went from somebody who was a very angry and guilt-ridden and shameful and frustrated and impatient mom to somebody who is more carefree, more confident, more happy, and able to loosen control a little bit with motherhood. So go back and watch video number 1 if you haven't done that already. If you have, great. We're going to jump right into step number 2. And step number 2 is to evaluate the rule book you have for your kids. If you remember step number 1, you evaluated the rule book you have for yourself as a mom. So now we're going to look at what expectations you have for your kids. What are all the rules you have for your kids right now at this point in time? What behaviors do you expect of them? And then once again, you're going to reflect and look at everything you wrote down and say to yourself, do I like this rule? Yes or no? Why or why not? And I want to share with you an example I have. So the rule book I have for my kids is this: they shouldn't talk back. When I ask them to do something, they should do it the first time. They should be able to entertain themselves. They shouldn't be super silly. Now they're 6 and 8, right? Do you think that's realistic? And they shouldn't be falling down all the time. I have a lot of horseplay in my house, a lot of wrestling and things like that. So, but in my mind, they shouldn't be doing that and falling down all the time. They should have excellent behavior at school. They should want to read. They shouldn't say mean things to others or about themselves. So this was my rule book for my kids. And as you can see, I had a lot of expectations about how I wanted them to show up, how I wanted them to respond to me, how I wanted them to behave. And guess what? About 90% of the time, they didn't follow any of these rules. And guess what that made me feel? Extremely frustrated and angry, and caused me to yell. And so when I wrote down all of these rules that I had for my kids, I went back and I asked myself, did I like the rule? So one of the rules, let's look at, they shouldn't be super silly. So do I really like that rule? Well, at the end of the day, no, because what I came to was that really doesn't allow them to be themselves. If I'm expecting them to be just, stoic maybe, or not expressing themselves in a fun, silly way, as young kids often do, I'm shutting down part of themselves that's authentic to themselves. So I didn't really like that rule at the end of the day. What it came down to is that I had to look at myself more and kind of clear up some of those expectations and realize some of this stuff is just normal behavior. And the rule book I had for my kids was as strict as the rule book I had for myself as a mom. And just like I wasn't living up to my rule book, and as I explored that, it was impossible for me to do. I had to change the way I wanted to be as a mom and view myself. They weren't living up to the rule book I had in my mind for them. So I want you to look at the rule books you have for your kids. Maybe you have to go through each child, because I'm sure if you have more than one child, your rule book may be different depending on their age and things like that. And then ask yourself, do you like the rule? Why do you like it? Why do you not like it? Are you willing to let go of the rule? Are you willing to explore a little bit more and see what is it about that rule that really you feel so tied to? Like, so for me, the super silly rule was really that I just didn't want to listen to it sometimes. I didn't want to listen to the potty talk. I didn't want to listen to the funny voices. I just didn't want to listen to it. And really, it was a me thing. It wasn't really anything to do with them. They weren't harming anybody. They weren't being mean. So that then becomes my work. to try to do. And like I said, when I came from the mindset of allowing them to be super silly and not making it such a rule that they can't, when I thought about letting them be themselves and acting out the way that they truly, their personality, it helped me to not become so frustrated in those moments when they were acting super silly. Okay. So I want you to do that work for yourself. Go through each child or maybe your children in general and put down the rules that your brain is telling you have for them. Look through and see if they're realistic. Question them. See if there's a different way you can view those rules. See what's maybe so great about those rules and what's so not great about those rules. And then you can always add back in the rules that you want to keep for your kids. All right. So once again, if you don't have this already, you can download this on the website. We're on step number 2 today. If you haven't seen step number 1, you can go back and look at the first blog post that has a video that goes over all of step 1.